The city of Minneapolis for the first time hosting a Big Ten basketball tournament. The last time there was a big-time event here, about a year ago, when the Final Four for women's basketball was held in the Target Center. And inside that building is exactly where we are right now. Thrilled to have you with us. Autumn Johnson, Christy Winter-Scott, Megan McEwen, and me, Mike Hall. We've got a ton coming up. As you can see, everybody's getting ready for the action, which starts in just a little bit here on the Big Ten Network. Every game Wednesday, every game Thursday, every game Friday and Saturday right here on our air. And before we dive into it too much, let me just ask you ladies kind of a big picture question of how do you describe the season that was for Big Ten women's hoops?
This by far was arguably the best season the Big Ten has seen in a really long time. 5 different teams in the NCAA top 16 reveal, 6 ranked in the top 25. Hey, by the way, I opened up my calendar this morning. It's March 1st. Let's go. It's time to rock and roll.
I love it. Hey, Mike, it's been stupendous. And the thrill of every single game has been so much fun to watch. You never know who's going to win. 6 teams in the top 25, 4 teams in the top 10 this season. Every single night, you better bring your A game. I'm here for it.
It's been elite through and through, and from top to bottom. I mean, the league is just so deep, so competitive. And when you look at the bracket, the anticipation for me is like you clearly have a champion. Like there's no clear-cut answer to it, and that's a testament to how dangerous this conference is.
I mean, does Autumn Johnson know how to segue, or does Autumn Johnson know how to segue?
Do you want to switch seats?
Let's get to the big story, and the story is the bracket for this upcoming Big Ten women's basketball tournament. It all starts today. 12-13 and 11-14 will meet up. Second round tomorrow, quarterfinals, where you start getting those top 10 ranked teams in the Big Ten in action. Of course, semis on Saturday, and the championship comes your way on Sunday. So we talked about this a little bit, but another way to talk about the strength of the league, Megan, is to point out there was a point this season where 40% of the AP top 10 was Big Ten teams. That had never happened before.
Fantastic math, by the way, but to that point, it's so true to just show you the depth of this league. In the most recent NCAA top 16 reveal, 5 different Big Ten teams were in that: Indiana, Iowa, Ohio State, Michigan, and Maryland. So that being said, that means that 5 different teams could potentially host the first and second rounds of the NCAA tournament. As important as this tournament is, it's all going to come down to who can have success this week in order to be in a position to host over the course of the next few weeks.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, from top to bottom, as we said at the beginning, it's all about how well you're playing right now. It doesn't matter what December or January look like. Listen, we are ready for the strong momentum, and the teams that are playing the best defense right now are having the most success, and there's no mystery to that. You've got to bring your hard hat. You've got to be able to stop people. At this point, you have the chemistry on the offensive end. It's all about what you can do on defense to disrupt your opponent.
Yeah, and March is here, and we mentioned how deep this conference is. It's a resume boosting type of conference as well, where you're going up against the best of the best every single night. Any type of win that any team could get could be crucial when you look at the NCAA tournament if you knock off a ranked opponent. So that's very available in this Big Ten tournament. And again, one of the testaments that we see, it's the strongest, if not the best conference in the league.
And that's great news for a bubble team like, say, a Nebraska, who has played a crazy hard schedule. But to that point, if they get a win or two this week, it's going to look like a quality win to the committee, no matter who it is they play. The most quality win you can get in the Big Ten is if you somehow beat Indiana, which is hard to do. This team is number 2 in the country. They only have 2 losses the entire season. One of them was on the road. It came by 5 points. The other one was on the road. It came on a Caitlin Clark buzzer beater by 1 point. How do you describe the season that was for what's been the best team in this league?
Well, I just spoke about how the defense has to be paramount and top on the list. And when you have a team like Indiana, that's what it's been about, right? Only 2 losses this year, number 2 in the country for a reason. So when you have that kind of dogged personality and that identity on the defensive end, you have Mackenzie Holmes as the Defensive Player of the Year, shoring up that restricted area on the defensive side of things. I mean, that just builds trust and confidence. The team has it in one another, but Terry Morin, she says this is what we do, right? If you come to Indiana, you have to lock it in on the defensive end, and that's just what they've presented all year. Yes, Caitlin Clark had some heroics there, and their previous loss was only a 5-point loss. 2 possessions. So it's all fixable. But at this point, you have to trust what you've been able to do well for the majority of the season with the sustainability of the defensive effort.
Absolutely. And I think this is just now a powerhouse in the nation. And when you look at the championship and the NCAA tournament, you think of like that Indiana could possibly make a Final Four, if not a championship run. So that's really exciting to see. But I think it started even like a couple of years ago when they made the Sweet 16 and now the Elite 8. I think it's now due for this team to make that big push. But this is a team that's been top 5 in the nation since week 4. And we had this team around number 11, number 12 in the preseason. They're waking people up. They're saying we're here. And not even just the defense, adding a new element, a new layer beyond the arc, bringing in those transfers. Credit to Terry Morin for just bringing quality into this program, to not letting up after missing out of 3 starters that were seniors last year.
Yeah. Indiana is holding teams to under 61 points a game. That ranks first in the Big Ten. But to that point, perhaps what's most impressive is the fact that for the first time in a long time, Indiana has some depth finally.
They
6 different players average 9 points or more. So now Coach Morin can go to her bench and still have some firepower from an offensive perspective. And that's been a huge key to success, because as you continue to get further and further into March, depth matters. And you need to be able to bring people off the bench. You don't know what injuries are going to be like. It's tough to play back-to-back games and keep legs fresh. That depth is huge for the Hoosiers.
No question about it. When you have a player like Chloe Moore-McNeil who stepped in for an injured Grace Berger for 8 games, Terry Morin said she was the MVP during that stretch. So you have to be able to rely upon people to step up in situations where you don't know. I mean, it's the uncontrollable when you have injuries and whatnot. But Grace Berger, can we just talk about her for a minute and how well she has been playing this year, especially down the stretch for her team? The trust that Terry Morin has in her when she got into foul trouble earlier and a couple games ago. She had 4 fouls going into the 4th quarter. Terry Morin kept her on the court. So you have to love that. But Chloe Moore-McNeil, to me, is the X factor on both sides of the ball for Indiana this season.
I completely agree with you, especially from the standpoint of Chloe Moore-McNeil is given the toughest defensive assignment every single game. And you have to have the right mindset when you are given the toughest defensive assignment. You have to understand personnel going against a player like Caitlin Clark, who has the biggest bag of tricks of anybody in the country. But going back to Grace Berger for one moment, the mid-range master. In this day and age, as positionless basketball continues to become the way that things are going, I love the way she can stop, pop, and knock it from the mid-range.
Yeah, and that's her favorite player, right? She took the number of, what's the player from the Celtics? The Celtics, number 34, help me.
Paul Pierce?
Yes, Paul Pierce, thank you. Paul Pierce, and that's why she wears 34. But the mid-range game, I mean, it's been lethal for her.
I'll say this. My first year covering Big Ten women's hoops was 07-08. I think this is the best team I've covered, this Indiana team, because of the depth, because you can get to a Chloe Moore-McNeil who's incredibly valuable, and it might be the 5th or 6th name you bring up on that Indiana squad.
So smart.
That being said, one of the most impressive things they've done is they've been on the top of this league when Caitlin Clark is playing. Let's turn our attention to this generational superstar that is Caitlin Clark, because they're the reigning Big Ten tournament champions.
Iowa's Caitlin Clark has been nothing short of phenomenal this season. If she doesn't get National Player of the Year, I don't know what else she has to show with the numbers she has put up. 9 career triple-doubles. She's had 3 alone this season. The only person in women's basketball who's had more triple-doubles than her is Sabrina Ionescu, who was, by the way, pretty good college basketball player.
That's great company.
She's 26. It's good company.
But
Clark has done this season outside of that scoring. She's averaging more than 27 points a game. Her facilitating has been so key for the Hawkeyes. More than 8 assists per game in conference play. When Caitlin Clark is able to rebound and get the break started, Iowa's able to play so much faster, and they can beat anybody up and down the court, and that pace is really tough for teams to sustain.
No question about it. And that's why Iowa is one of the top teams in terms of their scoring ability and the balance of that. But it's all about their assist numbers. You have the celebration of assists more than buckets going in. Lisa Bluter yelling beautiful when the pass is made. I mean, you have to love that. But it's the law firm for me. It's the two-man game. It's Caitlin Clark and inside with Monica Sinano. I mean, with her shooting 67% from the floor, that's a tough duo to stop. But they have the continuity. They have the experience. And they were cut short last year in the tournament in the Sweet 16. So they're hungry. They're coming back to win another title here in the tournament. That duo with Monica Sinano and Caitlin Clark, tough to stop. But when you were talking about the ability of Caitlin Clark to get downhill with getting her rebounds at 8 a game, she almost had her 10th triple-double. She had 9 rebounds and 9 assists in the last game with over 30 points a game once again.
I also think just the unsung heroes, too, with Kate Martin and also just in general, Warnock. When you look at the entire squad, Hannah Stolke, who's having an incredible freshman year. There's so many pieces that makes this, a successful group and one of the top offenses in the nation, I would say. But everyone's bought into their role every single night. It just doesn't take, the law firm. It takes every single person. And I think that's what makes them stand out around the rest. They have chemistry that's off the charts. When you look at what they've been able to consistently have for the past 3 years, the same starting 5. So that helps in these type of situations. But they thrive off of that, a fast-paced offense for sure. And even trying to now get their defensive mindset up, right? Getting those stops when needed. I think that's what's been crucial for this team, especially down the stretch and especially now coming into March.
You brought up chemistry, and I think that's a perfect segue to our next team, Maryland, because they lost a lot of players last year, and they brought in some new players, and it is pretty clear the chemistry on this team is dramatically different. It's hard to believe this, they were a quiet Maryland team the first month or two of the season, and if you talk to Brenda Fries, she'll say we just got better bit by bit. They're now a top 10 ranked team. They're one of the scariest teams in the country at this point.
They sure are. Even starting off, they knocked off Baylor, and we were like, okay, you have our attention. Like, what's going on here? Now, and then UConn following after. They beat Ohio State twice, Iowa, Michigan. So many quality wins that could possibly have them as a 1 seed when you look down further. And as we mentioned, playing in the Big Ten in this tournament, that could be another resume booster if they can continue that push. But this is a team that's playing its best basketball right now. And I think not only just their offense is always on full display when you have a Diamond Miller who shines so bright in this league, a Cheyenne Sellers who's having a breakout sophomore year, but now you have other players, even Abby Myers, I can go on and on, but when you have other players like Brene Alexander and Lavender Briggs who is bringing their A game, this is a team that can't be stopped. And I think what impressed us the most is their defense when they were playing Iowa.
Oh, no question. When you have Lisa Bluter saying that she hadn't seen Caitlin Clark disrupted that way, the way that Maryland was front covering her, front guarding her the entire game and just disrupting the flow of offense because of her 9 assist a game, because when the ball was out of her hands, it was tough for Iowa to get in any kind of rhythm. They kept her off the glass, and again, now you can't get her downhill in transition. So it just really took the flow out of Iowa's game in that particular contest. But 9 new players Brenda Fries had on her roster this year, only 1 returning starter in Diamond Miller, but this team has really come together. You never know what that's going to look like, but I've seen it before with Brenda Fries. When they went to the Final Four back when Alyssa Thomas was on the team, they had 6 healthy players. They had 4 ACL injuries, a kid with mono that season, but they still managed to make it to the Final Four. So she somehow finds a way. Brenda Fries somehow has this magic formula to get everyone to be playing at their best.
Brenda Fries is one of the best coaches, not only in the Big Ten, but in the country because of her ability to adjust on the fly. I've been so impressed with how she's recruited and how she's handled the transfer portal. Only 3 players who played significant minutes a season ago came back this year. Then she added in a bunch of new pieces from the portal. 2 of her starters are from the portal. And for her to have the patience to sustain the season, things weren't necessarily going as dominantly well early on, but now Maryland, I don't want to play them. That's to me the most dangerous team right now, and it's because Brenda Fries has been patient and trusted the process.
Well, they don't have size, but they have speed.
Oh,
absolutely.
And Faith Masonis does everything, does all the dirty work that you need to win games.
You mentioned Brenda having to adjust to what things were. Kevin McGuff has had to make a huge adjustment. Arguably his best player, J.C. Sheldon, has missed the vast majority of the season, and yet they're still in a great position to get an excellent seed because they won their first 19 games of the season.
They were phenomenal with Kevin McGuff's challenges with the injuries. They've been fantastic this season in terms of being able to sustain that, but when you look at how they played in the last month or so, I was thinking, this is just my humble opinion, and you guys can agree or not, but for me, when you have those players playing such big minutes, I think fatigue was kind of a factor because they would start games out really strong and in a rhythm, but But as the game went on, you could see maybe fatigue setting in. The shots that they were normally making weren't falling during that 19-game win streak at the beginning of the year. So I think at some point, fatigue may have set in for this Ohio State team, but the way they've been playing defense, their 2-2-1 is so disruptive. When they have that on point, they're flying around and turning people over at a high rate, 13 turnovers forced a game.
I think just the adversity has made this team stronger too, right? I mean, you're missing 2 floor generals in J.C. Sheldon and also Madison Green as well.
True.
But the fact that you had a Cody McMahon in her freshman year show out the way she did, now the Big Ten Freshman of the Year, and then Taylor Theory, how she's elevated her game. Rebecca Mikalashkova, she's elevated her game down in the post, got in shape, got really dangerous for this team. I can go on and on and on. Taylor Mikesell just having that confidence of knocking down big bucket after big bucket and lethal beyond the 3. This is a complete squad that had to step up in the moment of adversity. You couldn't really sulk on the loss that you had. You had to figure it out. And I think this team was very dangerous when they ran that 2-2-1 or even 1-2-2 press.
Yes.
They have tons of scores, tons of depth, but just through that adversity, I think it had an opportunity for players to come in and shine, and now this is when they needed that experience coming into the Big Ten tournament in March.
Taylor Mikesell hasn't gotten enough credit for what she's been able to do this year, especially from a leadership standpoint. She's a 3-point shooter, knocks it down at more than 40% from beyond the arc. But that being said, she has been such a leader when it comes to the 2-2-1 press, the 1-2-2. I've been most impressed with the adjustments she's made offensively. Not only is she just a shooter now she can pump fake, put the ball on the ground to get to the basket. When you don't have a ton of numbers and you're starting to get fatigued as a team, it is so important to get opportunities at the foul line. And Taylor Mikesell has become one of the best at reading the defense and adjusting accordingly.
We mentioned Taylor Mikesell being out with injury, and Ohio State had to adjust. Layla Felia has been out for a while for the Michigan Wolverines, and they've had to adjust without her. You know, I mentioned that Maryland had been kind of quiet, but they're a top 10 team. The 5th team we're talking about in this segment is Michigan. You were talking about nobody wants to play them. How dangerous are they, especially with Leah Brown coming back to action this week?
I think they're very dangerous. Leah Brown, the fact that she missed 2 games, they fell against that Wisconsin game. They really needed her. This has been their floor general who's now playing out of position. She was out on the wing, but now they have her facilitating, and she's doing a great job of balancing when to get her shots in. But I think this is their engine and what makes them go. She's great at getting inside. She's great at knocking down shots. Even her vision and setting her teammates up has been successful, but just losing Layla Felia in general, this is their 2-way player, always has the toughest defensive assignments whenever they go up against teams. But I feel like for Michigan, you know, this is going to be a very crucial week for them, considering the fact that they are sitting kind of at the bottom of that when we had the top 16 reveal. They're going to play for home seating, right? They want that. They want to be in front of their home crowd whenever they come into March. So as we mentioned, the resume boosting type of caliber conference that this is going to be crucial for them. But I think having Leah Brown back will be huge for this team and can give them a lift.
Yeah, and Autumn, with that being said, you have a team in Michigan who I feel needs to make it at least to the semifinals here in Minneapolis. I think they have to advance that way. But you have Emily Kaiser, who was also on the first team with Leah Brown, and I think she's going to be an X factor. She has really lifted her numbers across the board for Michigan this year on the interior. Her high percentage shooting, almost 60% from the floor. She's been a difference maker. So without Layla Felia on the court, she was a great rebounder for this team. So I think rebounding and getting those kinds of stops and second chance opportunities are going to be huge here at the tournament. But I think Michigan, they have to advance to at least the semifinals here.
I agree with you as well, especially if they want to be in a position to host the first and second rounds of the NCAA tournament. They're a lock, by the way. They are in, but it's going to come down to can they host that first and second round. That being said, Michigan's backcourt is really tall. I would say the average is about 6 feet tall, and it's given teams a lot of trouble on the defensive side of the ball because that length is really disruptive. Michigan has fantastic ball screen defense with Emily Kaiser coming up on the high hedge. Teams don't know what to do when it comes to reversing the ball because Michigan is so committed to that ball screen defense, and the Wolverines are going to have to depend on the defensive side of the ball if they want to make it to the semifinals.
That's 5 teams, all with a legitimate chance to win this Big Ten tournament. They have been massive stories, not just in the league, but nationally. And oh, by the way, we didn't even get to Illinois. In a normal year where there wouldn't be this many great teams, that might be the story of the season, the fact that they're going to make a tournament for the first time in 2 decades in the first year of a brand new head coach.
Martin looking. Here's Clark. She fires, and it goes! She hit it!
Wow! The National Player of the Year hit the shot of the year to win a top 10 game in dramatic fashion and add another chapter to her already growing and already insane legacy. Oh, by the way, the Big Ten decided this week to make her the Conference Player of the Year. The awards were announced. Mackenzie Holmes, the Defensive Player of the Year. Indiana also got another honor with Terry Moore in the Coach of the Year. We mentioned Cody McMahon at OSU earlier. She was the Freshman of the Year. And another freshman, Hannah Stuelke, becomes the 6th Player of the Year. So let's talk about these awards. And obviously we'll start at the very top because we're at the point, she's only a junior, but we're basically running out of superlatives to describe her. I mean, what she's done is, it's indescribable. She is grabbing people who aren't women's basketball fans and bringing them to the sport. She's grabbing people that aren't basketball fans and bringing them to the sport.
Hey, Patrick Mahomes sent her a tweet, and I love that. And she said, "Goat, goat, goat." You know, so there's like this respect that she has gained, and not just for being an elite level basketball player, but an elite competitor. She is beyond a conductor for this Iowa basketball team, but she wants those moments. Everybody in the universe knew that the ball was going to Caitlin Clark, but the question was she going to knock that shot down? I was getting my hair done. I was sitting crisscross applesauce with my daughter, and guess what? I tried to jump up, and both hamstrings done for about 5 minutes after that. It was worth it, more than worth it. It was such a thrilling moment, and then to see her run to the fans and just embrace that moment, it was so quality in terms of what sports is all about, and to be in front of a sold-out crowd and to knock it down in the theatrical way that she did. I mean, it just speaks to who she is and how she's made up mentally.
Caitlin Clark hates to lose more than she loves to win, and that competitive fire is what makes her such a special player. She's averaging 27 points, 7 boards, 8 assists, fantastic numbers, but her mental side of things, as you mentioned too, that's where she's different. Like, Kobe Bryant was different. He got up at 4 in the morning to train. Michael Jordan the same way. Caitlin Clark has that mindset, and by the way, she loves Iowa. She loves the state. She loves the fan base. She loves Lisa Bluter as her head coach. She's not going anywhere, anybody. She's so determined to bring a championship to Iowa City, and to have a player in this day and age who loves the game of basketball as much as Caitlin Clark does makes her special.
She said Bluter made, you know, on that hug when she was hugging Lisa Bluter after she said Bluter made as a hashtag. I love that.
You know, you mentioned the mindset, the confidence. She went up to Holly Rowe and was like, hey, I knew that shot was money.
That's right.
That did it for me. Like, she knows those shots are going in. She practices them every single time. She's warming up from the logo. She's so confident in herself and her shot and her game every single night, and that's what allows her to be so consistent. But she's doing so many incredible things. Like, every single time it makes my jaw drop, but she's a unicorn. I think the fact that she's doing this in her junior year, freshman year, she shocked the entire nation, put her name on notice for everyone. Sophomore year, we kind of solidified like who she was and what she was doing and what she's about. And now junior year, she's just showing up and showing out, and we're just witnessing greatness at this point.
I've talked to a WNBA scout who says what they love about Caitlin Clark most is her IQ and that sense of the game. When you can control the game as a point guard the way that Clark does with her facilitating up the floor. Christy, you were a great post player back in the day. How much fun would it have been to play with Caitlin Clark running up the floor knowing you were going to get the ball?
Can I count how many goosebumps just went down both my arms when you asked me that question? First of all, I would love it. My head would be on a swivel. My hands would be up and ready to catch any pass that she's going to give me, because, listen, she's going to find you. If there's a sliver of light, she's going to make that play. And it's the best play for the team, whether she's scoring or her teammates are scoring the ball from how she's setting them up. Her offense and her IQ is just fantastic and through the roof. So, yes, I would love to play with a player like that. I don't care what position. I could be positionless. I would still want to play with her.
It is great, too. So often when she gets these post-game interviews, she gives credit to her team.
She
talks
does.
about her players
All the
so
time.
much. It's not like this ego has exploded while she's got all this acclaim. By the way, real quick, Mackenzie Holmes, great season. In a normal year, she might have been the Big Ten Player of the Year. Speaking of Indiana, here's a way to think about what Terry Morin has done as she wins the Big Ten Coach of the Year. In the history of Indiana women's basketball, they'd never won back-to-back 20 games. They've never had a 20-win season back-to-back years. Autumn, this is their 8th year in a row that they've done it under Terry Morin.
A powerhouse program that she's building over here. I mean, it started back even just a couple of years ago, going to the Sweet 16 and breaking into the Elite 8. I think they're destined, and primed for either a Final Four run, if not a championship run. This team can do it. They have the depth, but I think it kind of attributes back to Terry Moore and what she's been able to do with this program, bringing in the talent. We mentioned the turnover in the roster that they experienced this year, but still coming into the transfer portal, bringing in pieces that is going to buy into your defensive system and buy into what you're asking for and everyone to play into their role. I think that's elevated this team. Even when you look at their defense, it remains consistent day in and day out. But their offense this season, they're averaging more, I think like 10 more points than last year. They're up about 3 more threes per game coming into this year, adding that new layer to the system. But it goes back to the head coach, of course, implementing that system, having players trust in you, and setting them up for success, putting them in the role that they're going to succeed in.
No doubt. And it starts on the defensive end clearly for Terry Moore and her staff and all of her players as well. They're held accountable on the defensive end, but to stretch the floor and having a player like Sydney Parrish with her ability to knock in those threes, Chloe Moore-McNeil, who has upped her three-point percentage this season as well, it has been fantastic to see that. But Terry Moore has said, hey, we needed to have players stretch the floor. We needed to have players surrounding a player like Mackenzie Holmes, who's shooting 67-68% from the floor. We need to have that space created by the threes going down. So when you have a player like Grace Berger, who is killing it at the nail in that mid-range game, like Paul Pierce, the number that she wears, 34, that's what they need. They need 3 levels of efficient scoring, and they have that this year. But they've always had that defense, but now they have an open court on the offensive end, which makes it tough for them to be guarded.
It's so true because Indiana defensively has always been a disciplined team, but now on the offensive side especially, there's even more discipline. All 5 players on the floor for Indiana, all 5 starters average at least 9 or more points per game. That being said, everyone's unselfish. They don't care who gets the credit. When you have a player like Mackenzie Holmes, who is so dominant down low in the paint with her footwork, with her ability to pass out of a double team, that vision just creates more opportunities for teammates. So Indiana has great spacing offensively. They have multiple players that can score at 3 levels. It's a recipe for success, but credit Terry Morin for preaching that discipline to her team because, again, in this day and age, it's hard to get players to keep that discipline and team mindset.
That's right.
And to what I said earlier, too, in a normal year, Shauna Green would have locked down Coach of the Year if it weren't for what Terry Morin has done, getting her team to be number 2 in the country. That turnaround in Illinois has been incredible. Megan, let me ask you about freshman year. This is one that seemed really wide open because there were so many great options to be a freshman of the year. It went to Cody McMahon at Ohio State, which makes sense because she, not unlike Yarden Garzone at Indiana, made an instant impact their first game of the season.
Ohio State forward Cody McMahon, when I first saw her, I thought she looked like a junior in college because her body was college ready at 6 feet tall. She's so strong. When Cody McMahon gets the ball and she's going downhill, it's like a Mack truck coming down the highway. You better get out the way or just let her score. That's just how dominant she's been in that perspective. But her IQ from a defensive perspective in the back line of that 2-2-1 press. Ohio State defensive coordinator, call her right now because she'd be a great defensive back for you next season. She reads that so well, where the passers are going to do. She reads the eyes of the offensive player, and as a result, she's able to intercept a ton of passes, and she's able to penetrate and get 2 points on the other end.
Yeah, and you have to love that. I mean, the maturity that these freshmen, all of them who made the all-freshman team, all of them came in with a quality mindset, and that's what it takes. Sometimes they're not quite ready physically and mentally to be on the court and compete at a high level and produce on both sides. But just take a look at all of these names and the ability for them to mesh seamlessly into their respective ball clubs. I think that's so impressive to see because it's very uncommon for players to be able to just come right in and impact the team the way that those 5 players have.
Yeah, the Big Ten is in great hands. We just saw that lineup of freshmen that we have there, but Cody McMahon just standing out, shining so bright this season. As you mentioned, Megan, just going to the basket. Like, I enjoy watching her play and that joy that she has, but she literally glides when she gets to in the air. Her body control, everything and more. It's just so beautiful about her game. She's so disciplined. Even Coach McGuff was just talking about her decision making, even with the pass. I mean, she's just dominant. But I think what impresses me the most is her ability to step up in year 1, right? You think about all the injuries that this team has had, the adversities, for her to come in and just make that immediate impact as a freshman. The sky is the limit for her, and I'm excited to see what the future holds.
That was a powerful graphic. I mean, Schmeichel and Braun and Williams, those are the future of, they're the faces of those programs the next 3 or 4 years coming up. The first game will be Penn State and Minnesota, then Northwestern, Rutgers, and then we add up a bunch of teams coming in the second round. Quarterfinals on Friday. It's going to be an excellent week, and we gave you some of the big picture teams and storylines to follow. Let's get right to it. Who do you think is the favorite to win the Big Ten tournament this season?
Indiana is the favorite to win the Big Ten tournament this season. The way that the Hoosiers have played, ranked second in the nation. They've been so dominant in conference play. Losing to Iowa at the buzzer on the road is not a bad loss by any means, and the way Caitlin Clark's been playing is great. But that being said, this Indiana team has been so disciplined on the defensive side of the ball. First in the Big Ten in scoring defense at less than 61 points a game. And then offensively as well, more than 80 points a contest. 6 different players are averaging 9 points or more. But ultimately, this Indiana team plays together. They facilitate at a high rate. They get paint touches. They can play inside, outside. And when you have a post player like Mackenzie Holmes, who keeps as much attention in the paint as possible, it just opens up so much for the Hoosiers offensively.
I agree. It's going to be Indiana for me right now. I think defense right now, at this juncture of the season, you have to be playing your best basketball on that side of the court. Your offense is going to take care of itself because of the energy, the effort, and the focus that you bring on the defensive end. Terry Morin will expect nothing less than your best on that side. They expect it of themselves. You have disciplined players on the defensive end. You have trust factor. It's just a bevy of positivity when it comes to this Indiana team. That's why they've only lost 2 games. That's why they've been ranked number 2 in the country over the last couple of weeks. They've been able to sustain their excellence, and the balance on the offensive end has been tough for opponents to stop. So you can talk about the machine that they are on the defensive end, but when you talk about what they are able to do with their chemistry and their trust on the offensive side and the pace of play and their ability to be balanced and impactful on all 3 levels, it's just been tough to stop for opponents. So for me, it's going to be Indiana right now. I think they have something to prove. They want to come back and win it this year.
Well, we might sound like a broken record up here because I'm going to say Indiana too. I mean, come on. The way they've been so dominant from start to finish this season, not even just counting the Iowa game, they lost back in December, right? Late December when they were missing Grace Berger. They have a complete squad on both ends. They are two-way players on like 1 through 5. But I want to step away from the stats, the numbers, like just talking about the competitive spirit that this team has. Grace Berger was talking about last year when she remembered that Iowa beat them in that last regular season in the championship game last year, and knowing that they lost off of a buzzer beater in that last game, that game's going to sting. They're going to remember that very vividly. So coming into this one, I think that that's going to be fresh on their mind. They have one mission. There's a lot of seniors on this team that want this really bad, so I think they're going to come in with that edge.
To that competitive nature point, I was interviewing Mackenzie Holmes and Grace Berger after Indiana won a share of the Big Ten title, and they were like, yeah, we're supposed to do this. Their mindset is so scary. They were like, check off, knowing this is not what we're satisfied with. We have a lot more ahead of us.
Hungry.
All right, so that's the easy one. That's out of the way. Everyone picks the number 2 team in the country as the favorite to win. Give me a dark horse next. So it can't be Indiana, it can't be Iowa, it can't be Maryland, can't be a team ranked in the top 10 nationally. Who could win it if not them?
Michigan is a team I think could be a tremendous dark horse in this conference tournament simply because they have the ability to score from beyond the arc at times, and they have such a big backcourt in size and length. It's disruptive defensively. The Wolverines have been one of the best defensive teams in the Big Ten all year long because of that ball screen defense and not allowing teams to reverse the ball and shift their own defense. Rebounding's been great for Michigan. They've ranked in the top 2 in the Big Ten all season long in rebounding margin. The defensive side of the ball is going to be key in the Big Ten tournament. I think Michigan has the key to get it done.
Without Layla Field, it's going to be tough for Michigan to do that, but I concur. I like that. But I'm going to go with Illinois. No one's really talking about them. You were talking about them early in January. You were talking about them when they cracked into the top 25 this year. But Shauna Green has her team playing the right way right now. And the confidence that they're bringing into this tournament as the dark horse, no one's talking about us. That's what I'd be writing on the board. No one's talking about us. No one thinks that we have a chance to make some noise here in the tournament. They're going to make some noise. I think that's why, for me, that they're the dark horse this year, because no one else sees it but them in their own locker room.
I see it. I agree with Illinois for sure. And I think I'm going to go with Nebraska to kind of switch things up here a little bit. And hear me out. I looked at the bracket. I saw like their journey that they have ahead. They have Michigan State tomorrow, which they're the team that they beat. They took out Indiana. Well, they went into overtime with Indiana, so they took them to a wire. And then just playing Iowa, they played them very close in that first game, 20-point loss in that second game, but they know what they're capable of. I think they've had some inconsistencies on offense, but that defense has been there all season long. If they can show up and show out in these games coming into this tournament, I think that would be crucial for them. Even that win versus Maryland in December, like this is a team that's been right there the entire season, just needs to close it out. The stakes are high this week, so I think they'll have that in mind. We saw what they were able to do last year, taking down Michigan in that building, but I'm really high on Nebraska. I think this has been an underperforming kind of season for them, but we know what offense they can possess when they're on that night.
And again, a brutal schedule with a dozen ranked teams they've already played. The thing about them, it's way too early to look at next year. They're going to be awesome next year. I mean, so many of their talented players are scheduled to come back next season. All right, one more on this tournament before we go. A matchup, a dream matchup that you're hoping we get to see is?
I would love to see Maryland, Iowa in the semifinals. The first matchup was a blowout, so was the second one. They split those two matchups, but the defensive adjustments Maryland made in that second matchup against Iowa to blow them out by 30 points, to put Caitlin Clark in a box and one, mix up zone, man-to-man coverages. It was so impressive. Lisa Bluter and Brenda Freese are two of the best coaches in the Big Ten. I would love to see that chess match rematch again.
No, hey, listen. Run it back. Let's go. Iowa and Indiana. Is that my buzzer? Is that reflex? Is that the buzzer? That's wrong? Okay. Wait a minute. Hey, another buzzer beater? Yes. Is that a buzzer beater? Hey, listen. I want to see Iowa and Indiana play again. I mean, the third time's a charm. Am I wrong again? What? No, it's just envision Caitlin Clark hitting the buzzer beater when you hear those buzzers in here. Anywho, but I'm taking that game because that was just so epic, and the hunger for both teams to not only win it like Iowa did, but come back and try to fight to win like Indiana couldn't do in that last game. So they have another chance. I want to see another chance for Indiana.
I want to see it too. Give me a three-peat. Indiana, Iowa, and I think those buzzers are just kind of foreshadowing the buzzer beaters that we're going to see for sure. But, I mean, no doubt about it. The top two teams, I mean, it could be Maryland in there, but I think I'm going to have Iowa down the stretch coming up against the Terps. But these are two teams that just want it, like, really bad. And I know Indiana, I feel like they're going to hoist it up when it's all said and done. But I would really like to see that thriller once again. So sign me up.
Another look at the city of Minneapolis. It looks really cold, that shot. I swear it's not that bad. It's been okay weather-wise here. They had snow a few days ago, but Mary Tyler Moore's throwing her hat up in the air for a reason. It's going to be a celebration all week long here at the Target Center. And when the week is done, we will get ready for Selection Sunday when the announcements will come out who's playing in the NCAA tournament. Autumn Johnson has listed right now that the Big Ten is going to have 8 teams in. Now, that is not only the most of any conference nationally, but that would be the most in the history of the league. 7 is the most that the Big Ten has ever put in one NCAA tournament. Obviously, Nebraska is the one with an asterisk next to it because even though they've had an amazing season, they've just had a brutal schedule, so they're perhaps going to have to get a win or two. Let me ask what likelihood it is the Big Ten could have multiple 1 seeds for what would be the first time.
So Indiana, as you saw right there, I have them sitting on my 1 line, but a possibility for Maryland to break in would be really crucial, not just for the conference, but just nationally. I think they could really be a contender when it comes to a Final Four championship team. That depth is going to be important. We talked about both sides of the ball, and offense and defense, what they've been able to provide. But Maryland, for me, like, you know, with Stanford and also Utah sitting at that 1 line at the bottom, I think that spot is vulnerable for them, so they can break it in that way. And the line of path that they have is incredible. Like, they're going to go up against possibly 2 ranked foes. If they can get that done, that adds to their resume. They're already 6-3 versus net top 25 foes. They have 3 wins over top 10 teams, so their resume is continuously looking very strong. So the Big Ten tournament for them could be a very impressive way and a very impressive showing to the selection committee to break into that 1 line.
That's a big storyline to keep an eye on all week long. We're also going to keep an eye on if Michigan can stay in that top 16 overall seed, which would mean they would host their first 2 games of the NCAA tournament.
They've had
big from a Power 5 conference. Nebraska has to get to the championship day in order to get into the tournament.
Man, if they beat Michigan State and beat Indiana, and that's not enough for the committee, I mean, they already beat Maryland on the road by 20 earlier this year.
Right. But they've also had tough losses, losing to Rutgers earlier in the season.
They are arriving here in Minneapolis. The first game will be Minnesota and Penn State, 2 Eastern, 1 Central time. They're here, they're in the arena, they've done their shoot-arounds, and we've already seen some incredible drama. You think I'm joking? Oh, no. You see, the Minnesota shoot-around ended with nobody making a half-court shot!
Let's go!
Until the head coach, Lindsey Whalen, said, give me a shot! Whalen, of course, starred here from 2010 to 2018 in this building for the Minnesota Lynx, and she hit the shot. By the way, I asked her, how many of you made? She goes, 11. She made 11 of them this season.
Out, Lindsey.
Minnesota-Penn State is the first game we have today. What are you most looking forward to seeing?
I'm most looking forward to seeing how Minnesota handles Penn State's press. The last time these two teams met, Minnesota first off won both matchups this season, but Minnesota had 27 turnovers in that last matchup. Can the Gophers find a way to take care of the ball and handle Penn State's press? Because the Nittany Lions have been very successful generating points off of turnovers, and it's really difficult when you have to go against the press. It's exhausting the whole entire game. Minnesota has to stay focused and try to get the ball up the floor as fast as possible.
Well, for Penn State, they have to score off of those turnovers. They didn't really do a good job with that. They have to make it pay, right? Make the team pay. If you're going to be that disruptive on the defensive end, you can't not tie a bow on it on the offensive side. So Penn State, look for them to turn Minnesota over, but also pay it off on the other end.
Yeah, I think that press is definitely a high-risk, high-reward type of defense. But just coming in and protecting the glass, capitalizing on second-chance points, I thought that was something that Penn State struggled with when they were going up against Minnesota, who's the #1 team in the Big Ten in rebounds. But the environment, I think, is going to play a part. We're here in Minnesota. You know, I think this is a young squad coming in who's never been here in this type of tournament feel. So that experience versus like the rookie mindset coming in, just seeing how they can handle that moment too, is what I'm looking out for.
I don't think you guys noticed, but Rose Michaud just walked by. And yeah, I see you. She gave you guys a little side-eye look, and she wanted to be on TV. There she is.
Hey, honey.
That's the first game. The second game will be Northwestern taking on Rutgers. Christy, what are you most interested in watching in the second matchup?
It's a defensive battle. I mean, when you talk about a team like Northwestern, you talk about the Blizzard defense, but they're super young this year, right? So they're trying to get that philosophy back. And when you talk about Rutgers, you think of that 55 swarming, impactful defense, and they're short-benched. They only have 8 players. So I'm going to look for the defensive intensity in both of those teams today. I'm also going to look for who can score, right? Coach East Washington told us right after shooting practice today, hey, we're going to play some tough defense. We have a short bench, but we have to be able to outscore Northwestern this afternoon.
Due to Northwestern's youth, they actually haven't been playing a ton of Blizzard this year because the concepts are so hard to learn on the fly when you're young. I'm excited to see what the youth looks like in this game between Kayleen Smichael for Rutgers and Caroline Lau for Northwestern. 2 young guards that are coming up in this league that I think are going to have really successful careers. Northwestern has to find a way to contain Kayleen Smichael because she can score at 3 levels, but she can read not only the primary defender, but the secondary defender when she gets going downhill. The help side defense has to be there for Northwestern.
Yeah. And speaking of, defense for Northwestern, I want to talk about the offense. I'm looking forward to seeing who's going to be the third scorer for this team, right? Kaylee Walsh, you have Sydney Wood. I'm looking for Paige Mott, possibly, Courtney Shaw would be huge. They're going to need a collective effort going up against this Rutgers team. Rutgers is limited on the bench, but, Northwestern, they need to capitalize and make sure they're not coming up against empty possessions. So I think that's going to be key in this matchup. Yeah.
You guys mentioned some of the big freshmen playing. How about Shea Chesky taking the floor today? Mara Braun for Minnesota playing Mallory Heyer, Amaya Battle. This action, the 2 games you're going to see this afternoon, a great glimpse of the future of what the Big Ten very well may be led by. A couple things to keep in mind. No team in the history of this tournament, this will be the 30th tournament, has ever won 4 games in 4 days. It's never happened. The lowest seed to win it is a 5, and if you go back the last 8 times that there's been a Big Ten women's basketball tournament, a 1 seed or a 2 seed has been the champion every single time. We are going to be with you all week long. Every game, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, you will see us here at the desk, out on the court, calling the action. We hope you join us for what is going to be a fantastic matchup every single game. The Big Ten women's basketball tournament. It starts at 1 Central today.